Oh, what's this? It looks like an old diary. I think it must be my grandmother's. I'll just read from here. My father died young, leaving us penniless. My mother quickly found work as a washerwoman. It hollowed her out, stooped her back, and burnt her fingers. Many of the villagers worked for the British for good pay. My mother did not trust them, but I couldn't bear seeing her a shadow any longer, and so, barely 12 years old, I took a job in the Campbell kitchen. Mr. Campbell was a cotton merchant and a perfect gentleman when he wasn't drinking. Mrs. Campbell was elegantly plump and not at all stern. It was grueling, sweaty work, and I often thought my thin arms would snap under the weight of the copper pots. Caste lines blurred, it simply wasn't practical to keep the distance. But we still sat separately at meal times. When Mrs. Campbell was expecting another child, they moved me from the kitchen to the nursery. I cared for Margaret as if she were my own. Waking up in the middle of the night, cleaning, feeding, guiding, I did it all. As she learned to read English with her tutor, I did too, and together we'd marvel at the adventures of Robin Hood and his merry men. Slowly I became her friend and confidant. Mr. Campbell's trade was flourishing, and so the Campbells decided to return to their Glasgow estate, from where he would now manage his affairs. Mrs. Campbell called me into the parlour and had asked me to join them. What a prospect! How long had I yearned to see the lands of my favourite English novels? Besides, I wasn't ready to leave Margaret just yet. With great anticipation, I set off on the sickening sea to Scotland. Glasgow was not all I'd expected. The air smelt different, damp and sooty. Scottish food was not easy to digest, and fruit was now a rare delicacy. Mrs. Campbell allowed me to wear saris at home, but insisted I wear English dress when her friends came to tea. Often the gowns would have some Indian printing and beading, and it's then that I'd realise that for all the years, our clothes were really just the same. She paraded me through the parlour, showing me off like a rare exhibit. Margaret was growing up, and she didn't want me to mind her so closely, as she played with a growing number of friends. There wasn't much to do, and the homesickness was crippling. I hated going out on the streets, where the people didn't so much stare as swallow me, bite by bite. And it was always cold, a wet cold so severe that I often wish I had died on the sea before. The gardener was an old Lascar, and one day his wife came up to the house. I saw her from the window, and almost cried out with joy. We spoke of our lives in India, and soon became the best of friends. She introduced me to other Ayahs from across India in Glasgow, and we laughed and gossiped and lamented of other Ayahs, those who were almost beaten to death, and those to whom too much of a liking was taken. Glasgow slowly started to feel like home, and home it did become. Margaret was growing up and wouldn't need me much longer, so the gardener's wife set about playing matchmaker for me and found a nice young Indian man for me. I never thought I'd find such happiness. I still visit the Campbells from time to time, and never cease to marvel at the journey I've been on, from a poor child melting in a kitchen to the Glaswegian woman I am now.